I rise to move that motion listed 22 on today's order paper on page 8 be moved now, which is that the Community Service Bill 2026 now be read the second time.
Honourable members, motion ably moved. May I humbly call on the chairman of the committee to present the committee's reports.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I second the motion ably moved.
This is second reading, so just present the reports.
Very well. Mr. Speaker, I have in my hand the report of the Committee on Defense and Interior on the Community Service Bill 2026. Mr. Speaker, I pray that the Hansard Department captures the report in its entirety, whilst I touch on some salient points. Mr. Speaker, the Community Service Bill Mr. Speaker, let me take you to page 3. The administration of criminal justice in Ghana has over the years relied significantly on custodial sentences as a primary form of punishment for convicted persons. This approach has contributed to persistent overcrowding in prison facilities, placing considerable strain on the Ghana prison service and imposing a growing financial burden on government in respect of inmate maintenance, healthcare, feeding, and infrastructure. In response to these challenges, the Ministry of the Interior proposes to prioritize non-custodial sentencing within the broader criminal justice reforms. The objective is to provide appropriate alternatives to custodial sentences for minor and specified offenses, thereby advancing rehabilitation, mitigating recidivism, and facilitating the effective reintegration of offenders into society. Mr. Speaker, on page 13 of the report, the committee holds that the effective implementation of the bill requires targeted capacity building for public officials and relevant stakeholders, coupled with systematic public sensitization on the community service scheme. These interventions are necessary to ensure a uniform understanding of the objectives, procedures, and benefits of non-custodial sentencing among implementing actors and the general public. The committee endorses the conduct of structured training programs for judicial officers, law enforcement personnel, and other relevant stakeholders, including community leaders and traditional authorities. The organization of cross-sectoral workshops would further strengthen interagency coordination and advance the statutory objectives of the scheme. In conclusion, Mr. Speaker, the committee observes that the continued reliance on custodial sentencing for minor offenses has contributed to prison overcrowding, high rates of recidivism, constraints on restorative justice, and disproportionate impacts on vulnerable populations. The effective implementation of the community service framework provided for in the bill would strengthen public confidence in the administration of justice, promote compliance with court orders, facilitate offender rehabilitation, and enhance the sustainability of sentencing policy. Upon review of the Community Service Bill 2026, the committee finds that the bill constitutes a material step toward reforming Ghana's criminal justice system through the institutionalization of structured non-custodial sentencing. Accordingly, the committee recommends to the House to adopt its report and to pass the bill into law, subject to the amendments approved during the consideration stage, pursuant to Article 106 of the 1992 Constitution. Respectfully submitted. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable members, the motion for the second reading of the Community Service Bill 2026 has been ably moved by the Minister responsible for roads and highways. The chairperson of the committee has also presented the committee's report. It is now for the consideration of the House. Yes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to add my voice to the motion to the report ably presented by the chairman of the committee. Mr. Speaker, this is a welcoming bill, and the report is very detailed and gives a clear indication of what this bill seeks to do. Mr. Speaker, safe to say that under paragraph 3 of 15 of the report, it details what the Ministry of Interior proposes to prioritize as non-custodial sentences within the broader criminal justice reforms. Mr. Speaker, at page 5, the report deals or talks about the purpose of the bill and seeks to establish a National Community Service Secretariat. Mr. Speaker, it's a very important secretariat being envisaged under this bill. But I want to admonish the ministry that because of the very important nature of this bill and what it seeks to do, resources that is required to ensure the implementation or the effective organization of this secretariat ought to be made available in order not to create Goro boys at that secretariat. Mr. Speaker, it's very important to look at that. Secondly, we heard the chairman refer to the fiscal impact analysis as attached as Appendix A. You realize that that analysis or those analyses were made in 2023. And having seen a review, we are in 2026, and we are talking about 21 million Ghana cedis in 2023 as being the fiscal impact. We are in 2026. What is the actual figure? What are we talking about? I think a review of the fiscal impact analysis ought to be done to bring it in line with the current happenings, especially when ministries, departments, and agencies are suffering from releases from the Minister of Finance. They all have to go for what we call commitment authorization, stifling ministry, departments, and agencies, Mr. Speaker. It's very important that the Minister for Interior, who is seated, gets a review of this analysis by the Ministry of Finance and report to the House so that we support him in the implementation of this very important bill, so that he doesn't go and suffer obtaining what we call commitment authorization, which has become an albatross on the neck of all ministers, chief executives of this country, being implemented by the Minister of Finance. I thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, you are the mover of the motion, so you should be concluding for us. No, I'm saying that the minister responsible for roads and highways, he moved the motion, so he will be given an opportunity to conclude. You have the floor.
Mr. Speaker, just to state that the minister responsible for the Interior is now here, so I'm going to make my contribution as an ordinary member of the House. Mr. Speaker, I add my voice to colleagues who spoke earlier to say this bill is very important. Mr. Speaker, it is very difficult to understand why a young man who, out of hunger, though wrong, steals cassava and is thrown to jail the same way as somebody who murders another person. I think this bill is intending to make better sense of our criminal justice system. And indeed, keeping people in custody actually imposes extra financial burden on the state. Those people could get community service and clean the street within the communities within which they committed the offense. I heard my good friend, Honorable Yaobuama, talk about the need to reassess the financial impact of this bill. I agree with him. The only thing to add is that if this review takes place, it might actually reduce the figure, knowing very well that the economy has performed magic where things are far, far better. I also heard him talk about commitment authorization. Mr. Speaker, indeed, commitment authorization is the requirement to get commitment authorization has always been on our books. Unfortunately, governments in the past did not have the courage to implement it. Its implementation today is part of the reason we are able to exit the IMF program in flying colors and determine that we shouldn't go back there. So commitment authorization is to curb excesses where we go and commit government to expenditure in excess of what we can actually pay. So it is not supposed to stifle government program. And it is also clear that, unlike the past, Mr. Speaker, for instance, today, NHIS has got maybe at least 1 billion Ghana cedis sitting in their account waiting for claims. This is something, a kind of news we've never had in 2023, 2024. Today, Get Fund has got money to be able to pay for classrooms. Today, Mr. Speaker, the cedi is far better than it was in 2024, all because of prudence and the limitation put on ourselves. Mr. Speaker, today, the interest rate that we are paying on everything, Mr. Speaker, is far better, unlike at a point in time 50-something and then 23 and other things. So I agree with Honorable Buama that we should bring a revised indication as to what this bill means. He means well, because he knows that if the revision is done, this 23 million could reduce to maybe 20 million or 19 million. So I agree with him that he notices the positive trajectory of the economy and is in support of that and intending that we should review the figure to make sure that we benefit more. And with that, these few words, Mr. Speaker, I believe this will be one of the finest things we've done to reform our criminal justice system. People who steal goat, people who steal cassava, yes, it is a crime. It is not supposed to happen. But in my mind, anybody who steals a fresh corn from a farm is calling for help. It means that the person is hungry. And the best punishment for the person cannot be to put the person in jail and now ask taxpayers to contribute money to feed him in jail. Let that person clean the street or weed the side of the road in that community as a befitting reform process and reduce the cost of criminal justice and carry out better reform of that individual. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I encourage colleagues to support this bill at the second stage so that we can do the bill and consideration and pass a bill as quickly as possible. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I speak to point number 8.2 at page 8 of which is the funding and financial sustainability. Mr. Speaker, very respectfully, what we have in here is a clear highlight that there isn't sufficient funding source available. Mr. Speaker, and I believe that we should at this point be brainstorming on how we are going to provide this source of funding to enable this this pursuit becomes sustainable. Mr. Speaker, there is the proposal that some allocation be made from the District Assembly's Common Fund. But that is already struggling. What we have in terms of the District Assembly Common Fund has never been enough, even for what it is statutorily provided for. Yet, a suggestion is being made that 5% of it should be made available for the funding of this particular project. This is where we need to focus. This bill, this is where we need to focus. How are we going to provide funding for this? It's the elephant in the room. So laudable as this is, Mr. Speaker, we need to discuss how we are going to provide sustainable funding for this. When you look at the entirety of that particular paragraph, it's raising issues of funding. And so I believe that the sponsors of the bill should be making available to this House how they intend to make sustainable this pursuit. Mr. Speaker, very respectfully, I submit.
Yes, Honorable Zanato.
Thank you, Right Honourable Speaker, for the opportunity to make a comment on the report of the Committee on Defence and Interior on the Community Service Bill 2026. Mr. Speaker, this is a very forward-looking bill, and I certainly hope that members will participate in the consideration of this particular bill. Mr. Speaker, if you look at paragraph 8.4, the reference to gender-sensitive sentencing, it's really something that's very revolutionary as far as what we do in Ghana is concerned. And it's looking at the specific peculiar conditions that perhaps women who may be pregnant or who may have dependents, young children, for example, and the considerations that will be taken on board regarding sentencing, as well as recognizing the fact that historically, women have suffered levels of gender-based trauma and abuse. And this is making sure that looking into the future, we don't have members of our communities that when they are sentenced end up undergoing certain types of trauma and abuse and probably coming out worse off than they started off going in. Mr. Speaker, if you look at the fact that this is in line with Article 27 of the 1992 Constitution, and the fact that under the Convention on Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, this shows that Ghana is really looking forward in terms of gender mainstreaming, not just our budgets, but our bills as well. And it is my hope that in considering this bill, we will be cognizant of the fact that our communities should be able to benefit from some of these sentencing regimes rather than becoming a burden to the communities, as well as the fact that we do not want recidivism with regards to our females who will be sentenced and perhaps put in jail over the period. And with reference to what other members have made a comment on, is to ensure that the taxpayer is not shouldering an extra burden with regards to the feeding and the accommodation of persons who could otherwise serve some other punishment as part of the sanctions regime. So, Mr. Speaker, I would urge that members take an interest in this particular bill, as all communities will likely be impacted by this. Thank you very much.
Yes, Honorable Kwame Anyimedu-Antwi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to support the passage of this long-awaited bill. It is very important bill that I think the whole House is waiting for this bill to be passed. I note, Mr. Speaker, at paragraph 7 of the report, the fiscal impact analysis of the bill. And this is a requirement that every bill that comes to the House, we have to. And the savings that the ministry gives us is that we're going to make a savings of 493,407 from the prisons. I do not know if they have quantified the overcrowding of the prisons that this bill seeks to cure. So to me, there will be a lot of savings by the government, physically, financially, and other things. Mr. Speaker, I should, however, sound a caveat that in drafting the bill, we need to be careful. I overheard one person saying that we could, for instance, if we are, for instance, passing some bills like anti-LGBTQ bill, we could look at community service as a remedy or as a punishment if somebody is found foul. We need to be very careful because I wonder how you put somebody to do community service when the person is accused of LGBTQ activities. Mr. Speaker, you must as well sentence the person to death because people might even beat the person to death on the streets. So we have to be very careful in making sure that we do due diligence in assessing the kind of offenses or people that we convict that will be sent to do community service. But overall, I think this is overdue, and I will commend the minister so that the whole House will embrace it and do it with the speed of light. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, Minister responsible for. Yes.
Speaker, thank you very much for this opportunity. Speaker, let me particularly commend the Minister of Interior for this. Speaker, I'm hearing that guy, the other guy, I don't know why. And it's coming from this side. Why are you saying that guy? Please allow me to make one. Speaker, I want to personally commend the Minister of Interior for a very good job done. Speaker, as
Honourable members, order.
okay. Speaker, as you can see, this we cannot say that my side of the House is not in support of. All the submissions so far made gives you an indication that this is a very important bill. Speaker, first of all, for community service, as a student of criminology, I know that it benefits both the society and the offender. Speaker, to the extent that what the offender seeks to do or had gone to do, for which reason he or she would have gone through some custodial sentencing, sometimes may not just be a major offense. The Minister of Roads gave an example. Someone went in, stole a tuber of yam, and the person is incarcerated, even for a week, Speaker. And what happens is that if you look at the size or the sizes of our prisons in Ghana, it gives you an indication that there is overcrowding. You go to some of the prisons and you would see suspects or prisoners virtually standing because they do not have the requisite space to sleep. And when they even want to eat, there is no room for them. Speaker, so what you see is that where there is community service, there is reduction in overcrowding in the prisons. Second, you would also understand that it costs the taxpayers a lot of money to feed prisoners. And then where the Minister of Finance, Iteto, would have used the money to do the roads in Wejagbawe, he would end up using the money to take care of prisoners. And these are prisoners who may have just stolen a tuber of yam, or a goat, or a sheep. Speaker, so why would you not rather give the person room to serve the community he or she belongs to? That in itself puts the person under some stress, and that in itself gives the person some avenue to be rehabilitated. Speaker, if care is not taken and you push everyone or anyone to prisons for a very small offense, you may end up promoting recidivism. Recidivists are repeated offenders. They go in, they learn, they become hardened, and when they come out, they do worse things. Speaker, another reason why we should promote or push the community service is because it allows for family societal connection. Because when you are within the community and you are doing this community service, your friend, the society, wherever you find yourself, they try to give you a helping hand. Because sometimes they may just understand that the reason for which you have caused an offense or committed an offense may be as a result of hunger. You didn't have food to eat. Or somebody just triggered you and you misbehaved in a certain manner. But when you have this communal support, you become a changed person. Speaker, it also allows for offenders not to truncate any form of employment they find themselves in or their education. Assuming a university student who may have gone to steal something from his hall, maybe he stole a mobile phone, and that is the reason for which he is to be incarcerated. Speaker, what would happen is that such university student may not be able to proceed with his education just because he or she did so. But Speaker, such a university student can be made to weed several places, paint a lot of places, clean, go to the toilets, especially the Commonwealth toilets, get in there and make sure that place is well kept. And when this happens, Speaker, that person will not want to repeat that kind of offense. Speaker, there is also this part about inclusion of traditional authorities which have been captured in 8.5. And I think that that is a very important aspect of this. Our traditional leaders are the embodiment of customs and tradition. Speaker, I'm running up. And Speaker, you know, when we are able to empower them or resource them to instill discipline within the community, Speaker, some of these things that we see, even the disregard for basic traditional laws and customs, will not happen, because whoever may have committed this offense will know that you will be made to reappear before the traditional authority. And Speaker, their punishments are the kinds that if you are not careful, you will not want to try that offense again. Speaker, with all of this said, let me commend the Minister of Interior once again, and especially against the backdrop. These are, for me, Speaker, as an individual, these are two major things he did with the holiday bill, and I have said that maybe we have not taken a look at it, but that bill, what it does is that normally when you have to do maybe a Tuesday and there is an opportunity to do a Friday, it gives you ample time to rest so that you can come back on a Monday.
The bill available for us is the community
service bill. He's still a friend of that guy.
Yes. Very well, Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Let me not belabor the point. I think on several occasions, members in this House have called on governments over the years to consider developing an infrastructure for community service as part of the penal system of our country so that we can reduce the reliance on incarceration of all convicted persons. I think the point has been made about how costly incarceration is and the fact that incarceration has tended over the years to undermine the reformative objective of penalty when one commits an offense. So we want to commend the Minister for the Interior for bringing before us this community service bill so that we can establish the infrastructure for implementing community service as part of the penal system of our country. Let me highlight the fact that this bill itself does not define the offenses for which community service will apply. This bill does not do that. The Attorney General and the Minister for Justice will have to bring before us provisions amending the criminal code to identify the specific offenses where judges will be given the option to apply community service as part of the sentencing in lieu of incarceration. So I want to call on the Attorney General and Minister of Justice that once we are done with passing this bill, that he should bring to Parliament a set of proposals identifying the specific crimes that we can apply, community sentence as community service as an alternative. Mr. Speaker, I heard colleagues raise issues about financing. Clearly, this is an innovation, but there are precedents around the world that we can learn from. And so let's start. If along the lines we are having challenges with financing, this House is always there for proposal to be brought for our consideration. But let us not forget that community service is at a local level. Community service is at a local level, at the community level. And this is clearly within the remit of local government, authorities. And that is why the focus is on the community, the committees, the district committees, because they are the ones essentially that will be enforcing the community service provisions and implementing it. Let's not forget that community service can be very beneficial to local government authorities because essentially it involves the provision of labor, either weeding, cleaning, participation in infrastructure work, and etc. And this is labor that local government authorities will benefit from. And cheap labor. For big push. As for big push, I'm sure they need engineers and, and architects and laborers. So that's why the focus should be on developing the infrastructure at the district level. And so colleagues who are members of district assemblies will notice from the bill that there is supposed to be a report from every district that it has established the infrastructure. So I urge all of us upon the passage of this bill to try and assist our various assemblies to establish the infrastructure so that our constituents can benefit from having this alternative sentencing regime instead of being incarcerated. I thank colleagues for supporting the motion, and I believe that this is part of the wider reforms of the criminal justice system, and the Chief Justice is also reforming the judicial system to make sure they build their capacity to be able to implement provisions of the Community Service Act if it is ultimately passed. Mr. Speaker, I thank you very much.
Yes, Honorable Minister for
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker,
concluding remark.
if I were to make any lengthy comment, it would be like I haven't appreciated what my colleagues did before I came in. Mr. Speaker, you remember yesterday was Eid al-Adha. I was in the constituency, and this morning, because of the rains, almost all the flights from Accra, Kumasi to Accra had to be excessively delayed. And that really accounted for my running into the chamber late, even though I knew we had scheduled to take the bill today. So I'm really very sorry. But to thank colleagues for all the contribution that they made. Mr. Speaker, the issue of overcrowding is something that if we have to talk about will be very pathetic and I mean it's beyond sometimes comprehension. If you check our current prison population, the overcrowding is over 37%. We have a current population of about over 13,000 prisoners that are in our prisons. And Mr. Speaker, like many contributors rightly mentioned, today the cost of maintaining them, in fact, feeding them alone requires 10 million a quarter. And so annually, we have to feed them with 40 million. Mr. Speaker, even the 40 million, hopefully inadequate, we want to thank His Excellency the President and the Finance Ministry for reviewing the what we call ration fee, which was 1 cedi, 80 pesos, to now 5 cedis. Even without 5 cedis, Mr. Speaker, we believe that that is woefully inadequate to feed an adult. Because if you take into consideration school feeding, caterers are giving, I think, about, 4 cedis, 50 pesos for a meal for children in basic school. Now we give 5 cedis for adults for 3 meals. I don't know who created 3 and say it is square. Because they say 3 square. How can 3 be square? For 3 meals. So you can see the situation. And it's exacerbated, Mr. Speaker, over the years, we've not expanded the facilities. So if you take some of the facilities, for example, like in Sawam, which was built originally to take just about 1,500, today it's carrying over almost 4,000 prisoners. If you check Kumasi, which was built to take just about 500 prisoners, today it has over 1,600 prisoners. You can just see clearly that it is an area that is a bad difficulty. But Mr. Speaker, like I said, most importantly, I must thank my predecessors, especially the late Makoyongo, for the work that he tried to get this bill to this House. Unfortunately, he never saw, he was never able to do that. The like of His Excellency Kwesi Ahoy also tried, they couldn't. We have Honorable Ambusderi, he tried, he couldn't get it here. Honorable Herukwete, they all did their best. And Mr. Speaker, one of the things that helped me was not to start by reinventing the wheel, but to just build it upon where they got to. And I'm sure that is why, within the space of 1 year, we've been able to get it to that, because we're just building on what they were able to do instead of trying to start it all over again. I must thank His Excellency, especially the Minister for Attorney General and the Minister of Justice and Attorney General. I had to constantly be harassing him virtually to get this work from his ministry, and they did so well to assist us. The majority there in cabinet, everybody did their part. Mr. Speaker, let me just say, I heard majority there saying that we expect the Attorney General to come out with a guideline with this. If you check clause 40 of the bill, it clearly states what qualifies for the community service. It is sentences that are 3 years or below. Any sentencing that within our Sentencing Act that is 3 years or below can qualify for what we call community service, service. But it also gives the judge other rooms to be able to do other things. Mr. Speaker, with regards to the funding, I know it's someone says the biggest elephant in the room. Yes, funding is a challenge, and that's why we are proposing that this Assembly Common Fund, because like the majority leader said, this is a community-based thing. And when they provide those services, they are not supposed to be paid any amount. So this is to help the Disassembly itself. So if we are going to fall on the Disassembly Common Fund, I think it will be a right thing to do, but that's for this House to decide. Mr. Speaker, this community service bill, if it's passed into act, will still remain incomplete if we are not able to get the parole regulation also passed. And Mr. Speaker, we are currently working with the Minister of Justice and Attorney General because we've moved from cabinet, and I'm very optimistic that maybe next week we'll come to the House to lay the parole regulation, because that is what is going to complement this to make sure that we decongest our prisons very, very effectively. And most importantly, Mr. Speaker, I've been working with the Minister of Justice and Attorney General in the constitutional amendment that is currently ongoing, that we should make remand very restrictive, because currently it is massively abused. With their least provocation, they say they've remanded somebody. You go to police, they remand people anyhow. Sometimes they give terrible bail conditions which people are not able to meet. We want to take the opportunity in this constitutional amendment to restrict this unnecessary remand. I'm sure if we're able to get these three things working together, it is going to help us to decongest our prisons and also ourselves and make life a little more better. Like I said, Mr. Speaker, I'm not going to speak much, but to thank all my colleagues who had helped to get this up to this point, and to also urge the House to take keen interest when we get to the constitution stage, because that's where the real meat is, and that's where we need to make sure that we have a bill or an act that can stand the test of time. I want to thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity. Thank you so much.
Honourable members, the debate on the principles of the bill, on the basis of the explanatory memorandum and the report of the committee, has been concluded. Now, at the conclusion of the debate, the question is, as many as are in favor, say aye. Those against, say no. Honourable members, the ayes have it. The motion is accordingly adopted.
An act to establish a National Community Service Secretariat, provide for community service as an alternative to custodial sentencing for persons convicted of specified categories of offences and for related matters.
Honourable members, the Community Service Bill 2026 is accordingly read for the second time.